You're watching The Business of Law, brought to you by Bloomberg Law and the ABA Journal. I'm Pacchia. We're always talking on this show about what's happening in big law, and I think it's time that we took a look at some of the other types of law firms operating out there. With that in mind, we are now joined by Michael De Chiara. He's a founding partner at Zetlin De Chiara, a law firm that specializes in design and construction. Welcome. So very good to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit about your firm. How many attorneys?
Currently, we're 22. We were as high as 30. We were founded about 21 years ago, Mike Zetlin and myself, and two other partners, Ray Mellon and Carol Patterson. We had all been at larger firms, and we decided that it was time for us to strike out on our own, and we set up our little shop.
Were you all operating in this practice area before you started this firm?
Yeah, I think we all probably started in different areas, ended up practicing construction law for probably cumulatively, we had 20 years of experience. I had about a year and a half. Mike Zetlin probably had 4 or 5. Ray Mellon and Carol probably had 6 or 7 each. But we were all real good lawyers, and we figured, you know what? We see what other people are up to. We think we can do it better. And so we thought we'd get out there, and I think we've proven ourselves to be correct.
It's interesting. On the show, we're examining the legal recession and how it relates to both law schools and big law firms. But when it comes to smaller, more specialized practices, what's it been like going through the last 4 years?
Well, construction law is a somewhat cyclical practice. So, and depending upon how you define it, I'd say construction is probably the single biggest industry we have in the U.S. Some might argue IT. I would argue construction. You know, when you look at construction, it touches on everything. The building you're in, the architect happens to be a client of our firm. The people who were the engineers on this building happen to be clients of our firm. I'm not quite sure who built it, but likely if it was one of 2 or 3 prominent construction firms, we probably represented them. But construction touches on almost every aspect of the U.S. economy. And so it's, even though it's a fairly underappreciated area generally, it's a vital area. So sort of as goes construction, as goes the U.S. economy. We all know what happened in 2008. As a result of that, the construction industry took a tremendous hit. And our firm, fortunately, we didn't have to lay off anybody, but we didn't replace people. So we went from about 30 lawyers to about 22 lawyers, and now we're starting to come out of it, which is a very good thing, obviously.
Yeah, you have a cyclical downturn, some would say a structural downturn in the construction business, and you have a structural recession that's happening in law. That's a tough sale.
Yeah, I don't think there were structural impacts to the construction industry. I think there were to the U.S. economy generally, banking and finance in particular.
Which impacts it?
Sure, but in terms of construction, look, the first people that sort of feel it are going to be the architects and the engineers, because they don't get hired to design the new buildings. Then after the architects and the engineers feel it, then the contractors feel it. Our practice also includes real estate developers these days. So our practice focuses on anything that touches construction, be it the developers, be it the architects or engineers, be it the contractors or subcontractors. In the past, we've represented the U.S. GSA. I think we're the only private law firm to represent the GSA in a construction suit. It was a very, very large suit. We've represented the MTA, the Midtown Tunnel. We were counsel to the MTA for that, and that was fun. Quite an interesting experience, but fun. But in terms of what's happening in the legal profession, so the bigger firms, it's all over the industry newspapers. The bigger firms are going through a transformation. The days when you could throw hundreds of lawyers billing thousands of hours on transactions and having those costs blithely absorbed by corporations seem to be waning. So these firms that have sort of been built up around financial transactions, their future, I think, is somewhat less clear. But specialty firms like ours, things like construction or patent, trademark, or bankruptcy, I think have a much more vibrant future. Now, of course, all practice areas are going to be sinusoidal, even Bloomberg sinusoidal. And then the question becomes, how do you get through the downtime? And that becomes a challenge.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you have this dynamic that you just laid out for us where BigLaw is in a state of turmoil. You're operating in a specialized practice space. In the midst of this legal recession, is the game plan to get more aggressive in terms of business development, or is it about sitting tight? Are you taking work away from big firms?
Hard to say. Certainly we compete with big firms, so it's very common that we'll be on the other side of a litigation or a transaction, and there'll be a firm 10 times our size, 50 times our size on the other side. But you know, most large firms don't have a serious construction practice, and they don't have it because the economics typically haven't supported that kind of an effort. It's hard to bill $800 or $1,000 an hour to people who are doing work in the construction area. It's typical to bill half of that. And those numbers are often not acceptable to larger firms. They're built on a different economic model. In terms of, you know, how do you react when times are down? Well, you double down on your marketing. That's sort of basic. And you look into different areas. You look into ways that you can grow and you can diversify. And you have to change. I mean, we all know that if you're a dinosaur, you become extinct. So if you're not nimble and you're not out there looking to, how do you actually have two things you have to do. First, you have to figure out how your industry, how your, in our case, our legal practice is changing. And you need to be ahead of that curve. And then you have to figure out how do you distinguish yourself from your competition?
Right.
You know, and we like to think that we're quicker, smarter, more efficient, and it's really up to the clients to make the final call as to whether they think that's true or not.
Right. Now, you don't have to tell me the secret sauce, of course, but when you look out 5 years from now, are you guys going to be expanding? And if so,
Absolutely.
maybe what areas?
Absolutely. Well, I think our practice has changed. So we started out representing architects and engineers, then we morphed into some contractors. Now we have a serious push into representing owners and developers. So it's not to the exclusion of one, but just expanding the pie. That's one area. The next is geographically. Before the recession, we had an office in California, had a lot of fun with it. As a result of the recession, we closed that office. We're now looking to reopen California. We're looking to open in Florida. We're thinking about Texas. We're thinking about the Midwest, because these are areas where we think there's going to be a lot of construction activity, and we think, given the expertise that we have, we might be able to have some success.
A lot of real estate investors would be relieved to hear you mention Florida as one of those places you're thinking about doing some work.
Absolutely.
It's been flying on its back for so long.
Well, look, we started the firm 21 years ago. I would say for 19 years, continuously, I've had cases in Florida. I've had cases in California. And what we see in Florida now, in fact, we're involved in a very large matter there that I can't disclose, but I was shocked. I was staying at the Four Seasons Hotel in Miami on Brickell Avenue, beautiful building designed by one of our architectural clients. And I had been looking in the paper a couple of years ago, and there were apartments for sale for about $700,000 or $800,000 down the street. Last month, I was in the hotel, opened the paper, the same units now going for $3 million. So there's a tremendous demand for residential in Florida, especially southern Florida. So that's improbably, that's come back, and it's incredibly strong. Then you see cultural institutions going up. They have a new ballpark. They have a new museum that they're putting up. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of activity. Now, I'm not an expert on the Florida market, but I can tell you from my limited view, Florida is doing very well.
Oh, very interesting and very, very important perspective. Michael De Chiara, thanks so much for stopping by.
Well, thank you very much, Lee. It was an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure. That's Michael De Chiara, founding partner of Zetlin De Chiara LLP. If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, be sure to go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates, of course, on Twitter. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.